2% of dudes rapping, they ain't nice as me. 98% ain't lived the same type of life as me. The judge gave me life and then they sent me where the life is be. That level 4 with depth and vice, the type of stuff they like to see. Two choices, fight or flee. I refuse to die a chump. I never been a mark, but damn, it's scary when that riot jump. I seen dudes cry, get pumped, and some sexually brutalized. Knew a dude who lost his life and he was only doing 5 year-long racial fights when homie all you do is ride. Lonely days and nights up in a hole causing suicide. From the moment you arrive, you see the Mexican mafia, AB skinheads with big giant swastikas, pro-black philosophers, the BGF, the Kumi, and Muslims who will murk you from the nation to the Sunni. That MS was loony, quick to ride up on they rival. Even Christians went to church, hide knives up in a Bible. Political and tribal, the Crips and taboos, the Long Beach, the Hubs and the Dubs and the Grooves, the IE, the Bakersfield, the Dago Pyrus, the hustlers quick to roll, the gangsters don't move. Whatever click you choose, you better stay.
This video was sponsored by Mitchell Law Firm. If you have a record or you happen to know somebody who has a record and that record is hindering or impeding the quality of employment they're able to obtain, I strongly suggest you seek the law services of Farrah Mitchell. Miss Mitchell is a criminal law attorney who specializes in record expungement. Her services are nationwide, meaning regardless of whatever state you may have been convicted in, she still may be able to help. She also offers various other legal services at an extremely reasonable rate. So once again, I strongly suggest you contact her, get your record expunged, and get your life back in order. Say, what's cracking, YouTube? It's your boy 16 to Life, and I'm back like I'm on a parole violation. Yard down! Now, for those of y'all that's new to my page, in 1994, I got arrested. I was eventually sentenced to 16 years plus life, and I ended up serving 24 years straight in the California prison system. During those times, I accumulated some good stories and insight on prison. I'm going to share some with y'all today. If you like the video, be sure to hit the like button, leave a comment, subscribe. Most importantly, hit that notification bell. Yeah, that's me rapping on the intro like I keep telling y'all, man. The flow is nothing like Curtis Blow. That intro is finally getting mixed and mastered tomorrow. I'm going to be releasing it soon once I figure out how to release it, because like I said, putting stuff on Spotify and streaming, we get ripped off, man. We get 9/10 of a penny for every time a song is streamed. So I don't necessarily know if I want to give my music away like that. But anyway, man, we're going to get into it right now. Y'all already see the title, man. Are all or were all white Crips accepted, right? And to be honest, and when I say accepted, I'm meaning by the Crips. And so, to be honest, it just all depends on what prison, what time frame that a white Crip happened to hit the yard. And also, it especially mattered when a white Crip hit the yard, what other white Crips were present at that particular period. Now, when I say what time, I'm meaning, so when I got to prison in 1996. I don't think I encountered my first white Crip, probably, if I can recall correctly, until 1998, until I got to Ironwood. By that time, white Crips were pretty much no longer a, like a unicorn. People was used to seeing them from time to time, right? And so, like I said, it all just depends on who you were talking to during that time about white Crips, because you had some Crips who didn't necessarily welcome white Crips or necessarily welcome the problem that they brought for different reasons, right? And so when a white Crip hit the yard, first and foremost, he had to be accepted and welcomed by his immediate homeboys. So I'll just use the Inland Empire, that way I won't offend anybody. People getting their feelings, man, sometimes. So let's just say you had a white Crip from a neighborhood that was geographically located within the Inland Empire. So now, once he hits the yard, if his homies is not accepting him or embracing him, chances are high that you have the other Crips on the yard that's not gonna embrace him. So, one of the first things, like I said, is he has to be embraced by his car, unless now he has been doing time and other Crips know him to be solid, because like I said, when I first got to prison, a white Crip was automatically going to be a problem, because you had other whites, especially skinheads, Aryan brothers, things of that nature, feeling that this white dude was betraying his white race by running with the brothers. And then some of these other organizations also had policies where it was against their policy to be on the line with a race traitor. So they either had to take off and attack this white Crip, or they would also be deemed no good once it was found out by the higher ups in whatever organization that they ran with, that they programmed with a white Crip. So a white Crip was always problematic. And now sometimes, when a white Crip would happen to hit the yard, if he was not well known by his immediate cadre or his homeboys, sometimes, some of his homies may took a stance on that this dude was going to be forced to show that he would at least stand up for himself. Because you have people feeling like, why am I going to go to war for this dude when I don't even know this dude, and I don't even know if this dude is with the business, if he is a buster, is he going to stand up and represent himself, And so that sentiment right there also extended to many others outside of that car. They wanted to know, was basically putting their program, putting their life on the line, putting everything they had going on, was that worth it for a dude who was unwilling to stand up for himself? Now, we also know that in the California prisons, things are extremely racial. So in the event you had the whites attack a white Crip, chances were also high that it would involve not only just the Crips, but potentially all the blacks on the yard. Crips, Bloods, non-affiliates, brothers from up north, so on and so forth, right? Now, here's another conundrum that we're dealing with. In the basic terms of gang banging, when I say gang banging, I'm talking about Crips and Bloods. You had brothers from up north, Oakland, San Francisco, up in those areas, who did not gang bang. They weren't Crips, they weren't Bloods. So you had some of them who they was under the feeling, or they had sentiments about, why should I get caught up in a battle? I'm not no Crip, I'm not no Blood. Why should I get caught up with this white dude who wants to run with the blacks and wants to be a Crip? That's not even my fight. And so, and that is understandable. Why would a person want to be drawn into something that he didn't subscribe to? Now, and that's why when I stated it was important to think about what time period a white Crip may have came to prison. Like I say, I got to prison in the mid 90s. But now, of course, with each generation going back from the 90s, you had blacks in prison who were more race conscious, and some did not agree for several reasons with a white Crip running with a black organization. Now, here's one of the reasons is you had blacks, of course, in prison who were more, of course, when they was more racially conscious, they didn't agree with black on black crime. So they definitely didn't agree with giving a white Crip or a white Blood basically a pass to do things to other blacks. Because if you're in a gang, there are very few black gangs, Crip or Bloods, whose number one enemy is not another black gang, especially back in the time when I first started coming to prison. You didn't have a lot of racial hostility between blacks and Southern Mexicans really until the early 90s, mid 90s. Initially back in the early 80s, the majority of black gangs beef with only other black gangs. So let that sit in. So if you have a brother who is racially conscious, he's pro-black, and he is against a black man harming another black man, especially behind the color of a rag or the color of a territory, or behind a territory or a neighborhood, then he definitely would be against a white Crip basically getting a pass, saying it's okay for you to be white and harm other black people. Because a lot of times it's well known that when you have a white gang member who runs with a black gang, he is definitely going to have to prove himself in his gang and in his neighborhood first. And some people disagree with that. Also, you may have some white Crips in prison who felt comfortable with using the N-word. When I first got to the pen in 96, I was around many older dudes who had been down 10, 15, 20 years, lifers, dudes who had been going back and forth to the pen for a long time, who disagreed with brothers using the N-word, especially on the tier, out in the open on the basketball court, in the presence of other people, especially around other races, COs and things like that. So they definitely disagreed with a white dude feeling he had the okay to use the N-word. I done an interview not too long ago with a white Crip, Rob, also goes by the name of Super Cuz, and he told me at one point that some BGF dudes came and confronted him about using the N-word. And so I'm going to interview him again because that interview didn't come out good, and I'll let him explain that. So that was another problem that, you know, you had a lot of people who were black who did not necessarily support white Crips for that reason, right? Then, you know, you've had people who did not necessarily not support the white Crip, but they just felt hanging with a white Crip or being on the yard, and especially being in the cell with a white Crip, brought unnecessary problems, you know, because at some point in time, that white Crip more than likely was going to be attacked. And so if you're in the cell with a white Crip and some white dudes come up to him to attack him, you have to get up and defend your cellie. You know, that's only right. And they also may attack you on the pretense of believing you're going to get up and defend your cellie. So, you know, they figuring, hey, if we're going to get him, we might as well get the dudes that's going to help him too. And a lot of times in prison, the closest thing that you have to you sometimes is your cellie, right? So it was various reasons. Why some blacks did not embrace white Crips. Another one of the reasons is you had some dudes who felt that sometimes white Crips tried too hard to be accepted. Now, we have several, I would say, legendary white Crips, names that ring bells all over. You know, first and foremost, I believe, is Snow Rock, Whack Deuce, Super Cuz, Old Man from Faux Trey, Ran from 1200. You know, these dudes' names are well known throughout the penitentiary system, and that's just a few. There may be others, right? But you definitely hear these names. And like I said, especially back when I came to prison, when white Crips were still, you know, they was definitely still a problematic event or a problematic thing anytime they hit the yard. Now I hear that they're a little bit more accepted and the whites are not tripping. You know, like I say, I've been out of prison for about 5 or 6 years, so I don't necessarily know how true that is. But back in those days, it was always problematic when a white Crip hit the yard. You know, be ready, it's about to go up, it's about to get cracking, right? And so you had these Crips who were legendary, right? But not all Crips were legendary. Not all Crips, white Crips, you know, had established themselves, right? So some may have just been from their respective hoods, maybe, who knows, maybe 3-4 months, 5-6 months, a year before they got caught up in whatever situation that brought them to prison. So some of them did not have established reputations, right? And so you had some dudes who felt that these dudes would come to prison and they would try too hard to either be accepted or they would try too hard to prove themselves, right? Case in point, I have a good friend of mine who I'm going to interview soon. He done 18 years straight in Cashapp on a level 4. Calipatria, for those who do not know, is a well-known dangerous prison in California. You know, it's definitely synonymous with a lot of violence and stabbings and things of that nature. I believe the dude who told me this story, I believe he done maybe like 25, 27 years, somewhere around here. But he done 18 years straight in Calipatria. And so he recalled to me one time when there was a white Crip. They was on B Yard in Calipatria. And he said that this white Crip was unnecessarily staring real hard at a Southern Mexican. The Mexican asked him, hey man, you know, what is you looking at? The white Crip said, hey man, what is you looking at? The Southern Mexican said, okay, don't trip. I got you, Holmes. Don't trip, you know. He told me later that day, they stabbed the hell out of the white Crip. And he told me basically that, the brothers didn't do anything. He said, they talked about it, but he said at the end of the day, they felt that this white dude was unnecessarily starting problems, and they didn't want to get cracking and create a situation over something that had already happened. These are his words, not mine. And like I say, at some point in time, I'll interview him and we'll address that issue, right? So it just all depends on what time period a white Crip came to prison, and it was more important on who was on the line, at the time that white Crip hit whatever particular yard he hit. Like I said, you have individuals who did not necessarily embrace white dudes running with black organizations. And like I said, everybody in prison is not gang members. So you have people in prison who don't support Crip on blood violence, Crip on Crip violence, so on and so forth. So they definitely was not going to support a white dude doing something to a Crip or a blood, so on and so forth. So it just all depends. I know we've heard a lot of stories about white Crips coming to prison, and them riding with the blacks riding with them. But they wasn't necessarily always embraced. There are many stories of white Crips who come to prison, and for whatever reason, when it's time to get cracking, they roll up. They roll up. They don't want to defend themselves. And so it goes back to what I said earlier. You have a lot of people who feel, hey man, why should I stand up for a dude who won't stand up for himself? Because growing up gang banging, especially coming to prison, you'd hear a lot of people say that, hey man, you're a man, or I'm a man before I'm a Crip, before I'm a blood, so on and so forth. So basically what that's saying is, man, before you became a Crip or before you came a blood, you were a man and you are a man. So you, regardless, the Crip and blood stuff out the window. If a dude come up to you and slap you across the face, take something of yours, you have to defend yourself as a man. You cannot let a person just disrespect you, physically attack you, and not stand up for yourself. So if you're not, you have to at least be willing to be a man before you can be a Crip or a blood, so on and so forth, right? So anyway, you already know what it is, man. It's your boy 16 to life. Resume normal program.